Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite a panel of experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's going on in their own individual business, but also what's going on in their own individual business sector, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's business breakfast briefers panel. Punchline is what I meant to say. What's going on in this week's panel? I read the same bit twice. Anyway, let's move on. Let's introduce the panel. So we've got David Oldfield, Managing Director of Blue Sky Signs, Tricia Hay, Founder and Director of Stroud-based First Base Employment, Oliver Williams, Property Director of Staylet, and Neill Ricketts, CEO of Versarien. Right, good morning, guys. Thanks ever so much for joining us. Just quickly run through the headlines of today's papers. For the Western Daily Press, we've got hate crime reports reached new high. That's a really, really sad story. So the Guardian, really, really interesting article about documents show Putin planned to back unstable Trump in 2016 US election. I don't think many of us are too surprised at that. Here in the Daily Telegraph, neighbours pinged through the walls by the COVID app. The Daily Mail, what kind of state are we in? That's where a young girl's been raided by the police because she didn't isolate. The Times, a permanent move towards cafe culture in Britain's town centres. That's what caught my eye on the front page of the Times today. And also a big report on what's happening in Germany. The Sun, raid of shame, all about Hancock. And where did that camera, where did the film come from? Who took it? The plot thickens. The Daily Mirror, Britain's grinding to a halt. Again, this is all about isolating and about the pinging and the COVID app. And then finally, still my favorite newspaper for this month, and that is the Daily Star. The moon's throwing a bit of a wobbly. Hopefully Neil won't either. Let's go to you straight away, Neil, as you're dressed as the from YMCA this morning.
Some of us got to work, Mark, so came straight here. So it's interesting that you chose the Times. I chose the Times as well. You chose about coffee and not the cafe culture. I chose the big issue around climate change. I don't know which one of us got that right, but flooding in Europe is just a signal that something's not quite right with the environment. And I wonder how long it's going to be before we move from concern about the climate to climate being a real priority. A couple of local stories I've got to mention. My dad made it onto the front page of the Review, something I've never managed to achieve. He's trying to get some support from Dame Kelly around a reuse of the Beachley Army camp, where he served as an army apprentice. Good luck on that one. That segues into a story, it wasn't this week, it was last week actually, about Chris Jones. He was a Royal Engineer apprentice, died at the age of 19 in the Falklands and was remembered. I know that you've done your bit, Mark, with the SAS and the Royal Marines and the stuff like you keep telling me. But a real true hero, one of Cinderford's real heroes, and I'm working with the local community to mark him. We've got to start celebrating these heroes because they're all too easily forgotten. And so I'm going to work with the school and try and replicate what we've done in Wydeen. And it's one of the things that I worry about: the environment, education, and inspiration. Yes, we've been through some really difficult times, and we've got to remember that we've got to get our youth back into work and get them really fired up. There's no reason why they can't do anything else. One of the saddest stories was in the Citizen. I won't put it up, Mark, because I know that you're quite upset. But the Citizen there. Thoughts to Jack Adams' family, who was had his funeral this week. A sad loss to the rugby world, and especially Gloucestershire. So that's all I've got at the moment, Mark. I hope that's okay there. Lots of news on Punchline, obviously, about soaring figures from retail. I think it's coming from a low base, but something to really consider.
No, thanks very much for that, Neil, and thanks for bigging up my RAF military career. As everyone knows, actually, I was in the catering corps. Right, moving swiftly on. Oliver, let's go to you, sir. I shouldn't say catering corps. That's terrible, terrible slight. Some people have me for that. Actually, the catering flight. Oliver.
We're trying to inspire people here, Mark. All right, so there's no one better that can make bacon butties than you. Okay, for our special forces. All right, so let's
exactly. Can't march on an empty stomach.
That's right. That's exactly right. I've been remembered in dispatches. I can tell you that. Maybe not for the right reasons. Oliver, thanks ever so much for joining us today, mate.
Morning.
What have you picked out for us, please?
I kind of struggled. It's last time I did this, all that was all that was being talked about was kind of Brexit, to be honest, and a bit of COVID. So I think I picked up the Times and the Guardian today. There's a couple of similarities in there. There's the two big ones are, all about kids self-isolating and the whole track and trace app. There we go. Whole track and trace app and how it's really challenging workforce and employment across the country. And it blows my mind, because if this was working as well as it's working now 12 months ago, I think we might well be in a slightly more positive position than we are. And I've been pinged on it a few weeks back, and I'm lucky because I can work from home. But you've seen various industries. I mean, this obviously quotes the NHS here. There was the Nissan factory yesterday. There was Heathrow earlier in the week, and they had to shut down. Not shut down, but basically restrict Terminal 5 because 100 people got pinged at the same time. And it's a really difficult one to get my head around from a sort of an ethical point of view, because I'm sure Tricia can speak with a lot more integrity on this, but my side of the industry is hospitality. My background is hospitality. I've been speaking this week with members of Cheltenham Economic Recovery Task Force, with colleagues and associates across hotels and restaurants and stuff in town. And the whole country is struggling to particularly fill roles for that kind of entry level, previously 0-hour contract, particularly in hospitality. There's not enough drivers for shifting freight around the country. There's not enough people to pick and process food and those sorts of items. And then you've got hospitality, which has been given a horrible ride in the last 18 months. Arguably, it's difficult to say the worst because everyone's had it bad, but definitely one of the worst industries in terms of hit, because it's got so many small private business owners within it. And then just as we're about to kind of reopen and these businesses can get back on their feet, they're now having to deal with staff who can't come into work because their phone told them not to.
Does that lead us then to actually take the COVID app off? Have you ever actually considered that?
It can be difficult what you say when you're on kind of sort of a public platform. So I'm going to be discreet. What I will say is that I've heard, that a great deal of NHS staff have been told to remove it from their phones. Not recently. This is kind of going back a bit. Care staff, that sort of thing. I've heard anecdotally that that's been the case. There was an independent restaurateur who I was talking to this week within a group, and in Cheltenham, she was saying that the staff they also don't know what to do. It's really challenging for them because these are, particularly in hospitality, young kids from 16, 17 up to early 20s. They've just gone through a horrible time, a really challenging time in terms of whether it be school, home life, further education, whatever. And now they're faced with this kind of conundrum of, well, what's the right thing to do? Is it right to be loyal to my boss and support this company? Is it right to earn money for myself and possibly my family, whoever, if they have any dependents of any kind? Or should I just do what this phone tells me to do because they thought I was sat in having a coffee in somewhere the other week that someone happened to be positively tested for. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed, because it's addressed by the government. They need to either change their advice, I think, for the app, or they need to obviously they've said from in 3 days' time, if we've had those of us who had 2 jabs can ignore it. Well, that's great. I don't know what's going to happen in 3 days' time that isn't happening now. But also they need to, in that case, really step up the vaccine rollout, which has obviously been going very well, but they really need to step it up so that all these entry-level workers, etc., can be jabbed and get back to work.
I think I mean, it's 500,000 people that they got pinged, and that's a hell of a lot of workers that can't go to work. Thanks ever so much for that, Oliver. Very quickly, Trish, would you consider taking off the app? I mean, what you work in the employment base, working right across the different spectres, I assume. What are your clients saying?
I'm lucky enough not to have been pinged to date, which may be due to having an old house with 3-foot thick walls. But I understand that people are being pinged through the next door neighbours' premises, and certainly a while ago I heard of somebody who had been pinged by somebody walking outside on the street where their house was on pavement. I wouldn't take the app off, but I think I agree with Oliver completely. I think the government need to do something to desensitise the app so it's more conducive with keeping people in employment. I'm not sure, people are going to start switching it off if it is totally. I've heard of people being pinged on many occasions and having to have multiple periods of isolation, which isn't useful when you're looking to get people back to work. But obviously you need to do that safely. I did have a thought last night about linking up the COVID app and the NHS app, for example. And the COVID app, it stipulates that you've had 2 jabs, and if there was some way of linking the two, that if you had 2 jabs you wouldn't get pinged. But I think they really need to look at it because it's causing major disruption across those industries that Oliver's just mentioned.
No, it's really got something they've got to sort out very, very quickly. Okay, let's go back to the newspapers. What else have you picked out today, Trish?
I picked out the pingdemic, as they're calling it as well, with Nissan having 10% of the workforce out this week, 600 people out of 6,000 people, which is obviously causing major disruption. Manufacturing, hospitality, transport and healthcare being hit as well, as we've said. I also picked out from The Guardian the al fresco dining is due to stay, which, Oliver, hopefully will help some hospitality venues, although obviously some are limited in that they can't offer food outside their premises. But I would just like to see, I've, to be honest, absolutely enjoyed being served at my table. I'm not in a rush to get back to the bar and standing 5 deep. They don't see me very often anyway, because I'm only 5'2", so it would be helpful if they kept serving at tables.
Tricia, you're not waving enough cash around. You see, that's the problem. You've got to get out a £20 note, push it, and just wave it. That's what I normally do. The trick is to hold your money up like that.
Yeah.
Point to the person next to you so they serve them first, and then they'll come back to you.
Mark, you're showing your age. We don't use cash anymore. It's cards, mate.
Okay, that's very true. That's very true. Yes. No, but I can see what you mean. Why go back to the bar?
Yeah.
Would you pay the extra though? Would you pay the extra costs so that you can actually be served? That's the big ticket, because I talk to a lot of publicans, and the amount of cost on top for the staffing now is quite horrendous. It's not sustainable for some pubs.
I would, but maybe it's the establishments that I've recently visited. But I think they are missing a trick. In Europe, obviously, you go and you eat outside al fresco dining, and they'll come round to the table and top up your drink very quickly. You don't even have to sort of make a signal, and they'll come round and offer it. In our UK venues, they're not quite so cute on doing that, so I think they could make a bit more money from being very keen to offer a beverage. But yeah, I'd be willing to pay the extra because I think it's a far nicer experience not to have to wait at the bar for half an hour.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic eating outside. I mean, I love it. I've lived abroad lots and lots of times, and there's something really special about it, isn't it? And we have great weather like this. Then yeah, it's a great idea to carry on. Thanks, Trish. I'll quickly move over to Dave and give him a chance. Dave, thanks ever so much for coming along to Punchline Talks. I know this is your first time. So Dave, what's going on? What have you picked out in the papers, please?
Well, yeah, I'm just following on actually from the Times cafe culture story that you mentioned earlier, where they're trying to consider and work out what they're going to do with Britain's high streets, which is a bit of a quandary, and I know it's affected lots of people, but it's something that's actually been brought up in the I newspaper as well. And they're talking about changing the planning laws so that they can actually change disused shops and eyesores. And they're going to target them in their high street plan so that they can actually change offices into dwellings, and then change disused and eyesore shops into entertainment centres, which I think would be quite an interesting plan, but it does seem a little bit disjointed from the story that was in the Times, where they're trying to create a cafe culture. I think the last thing that we need is more coffee shops anywhere, personally. I think from a sort of culture point of view and city centres, I think actually, what we should be talking about is what's happening in King's Square at the moment, in King's Quarter. Because I think what's happening there is absolutely amazing, and it's something definitely that we all need to watch locally.
No, totally agree. And it's funny, surely though. I mean, my wife says this to me. There's at the end of the day, if you're going to go and want a coffee or something to eat, you've got to have the destination to go there for. So you can't just, well, you could, I suppose, just rock up and have a coffee. Then you go home again. You meet your friends, go home. But you need those shops, don't you? You need the other things to keep you busy so that you can actually walk around for, say, 2 or 3 hours, get absolutely exhausted, then go for a coffee and a meal. I mean, that's the way I see it. Surely they don't have, if it's all just coffee shop, or I don't know, a different type of, a fitness bar or something like that, it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. What's other people's opinion?
I think it's a difficult one, isn't it, really? Because, there's lots of shops that have disappeared from the high street. And I think it goes back to kind of a rates issue from kind of a historic, that all the local governments basically carried on with existing rates, even though they saw shops moving out of the centre, they stuck to their guns. And I think it might be a little bit not too late. It's never too late because you can always reverse things. But the idea that they're putting funding now, part of this is they've got a £10 million fund to remove chewing gum from the streets. I think if that's where they're thinking is going to make the change, then they're barking up the wrong tree, I think there.
No, totally agree. No, thanks ever so much for that, Dave. We're going to go flip back over to Neill now. Neill, let's talk about your own individual business. I know that you've moved recently, or you are moving to your new pad there in the Forest of Dean. Congratulations on that. But also, you've got a big story bubbling away today, isn't it, about moving into concrete with graphene?
Yeah, so yesterday we poured the first residential pad for graphene in concrete. You're probably asking, what's concrete got to do with graphene, or graphene got to do with concrete even. The fact of the matter is, as I said previously, we've got a bit of a climate crisis going on. If concrete was a nation, it would be the third biggest producer of CO2 in the world. And graphene in concrete can help to reduce the amount of CO2 produced by about 30%. And so we're working with government bodies to try and roll that out as we see these big infrastructure projects start. And for me, yesterday, real key moment, because we did a residential pour. We've done industrial pours before, but this was a pour in Simmons Yacht, and quite a difficult kind of location to get to. And we integrated the graphene at the mixing plant, so it was kind of a real pour, really, and a real, in my mind, a real revolutionary moment. And I think that's what we need at the moment. there was a story in one of the papers that said, you know, as a result of COVID and climate crisis and so on, we're going to see a lack of innovation. I actually think it's the opposite. I think we're seeing massive amounts of innovation. I do think that sometimes we're a bit slow to capture and to seize on that opportunity. So I don't, you know, there's always a lively discussion at the G1st LEP board about retail. As far as I'm concerned, retail's dead. I haven't got 2 or 3 hours like you, Mark. I'm not a man of leisure. I've actually got to work for a living and I've got kids, so I don't go to the high street, you know, and if I do grab a cup of coffee, it's because I'm on my way to a meeting or something. But I think we've got to recognize that, you know, the world is now dominated by Amazon and next day delivery, and it's far easier, fits with our lifestyles for a lot of people. Not everybody, you know, as I say, there are people more senior in our population, Mark, like yourself, that's got time to go and wander along the high street. But I do see the front page of the Financial Times there, you know, Revolut, I'm a Revolut customer. You know, the high street banks annoy me. The high street banks are now no longer on the high street. And I think, you know, with things like cryptocurrency, new manufacturing techniques, we're for a period of massive change. And I think it will be fueled by necessity. And that's my view there.
No, I'm very excited about the concrete. Just quickly go back a step, because just in case some people don't realise, basically the reason why concrete is so polluting is because of the way the manufacturing process, and you've got to make the steel in order to make it strong. So the steel goes in there, then you pour the concrete on top, isn't it?
Yeah, but unfortunately the steel corrodes, and so concrete has a lifetime. Then you've got to knock it down. Then you've got to get rid of the steel from within the concrete, and it's a really messy, horrible process. And actually, you know, we're looking at even 3D printing houses in the near future. So, you know, massive change within the construction industry. The reason that we can do that is because we've got this enabling technology called graphene. So it doesn't matter whether it's textiles or it's concrete or it's plastics or it's carbon fiber, it's the aircraft industry, the automotive industry, or the medical industry. You know, graphene is coming, and it's coming very, very quickly at the moment. So really pleased to be right at the forefront of that, you know, helping to lead that. And lots of challenges, but lots and lots of success at the moment as well.
No,
can I just jump in there with another story actually that might relate to that? In the Daily Express today, we've got the world first 3D printed bridge, which has just been constructed. It took 6 months to actually print, and it's been erected in Amsterdam. And it's been absolutely covered with sensors so they can monitor exactly what's happening with it and what its stretch and its loads and things like that are. And they've built a twin to monitor its lifetime as well. So in the detail, I mean, you won't be able to see it in the picture there, but the detail that's been printed into that bridge is absolutely phenomenal. So it shows, you know, what is possible out there and what is actually happening in your area, I guess, Neill.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing unprecedented levels of interest. You know, everybody is, you know, the government are forcing the net zero agenda, quite rightly. That means that that everything has to change, unfortunately. It's not a case of we'd like it to change, or maybe it'd be interesting to change. It's now actually, you know, hellfire, what are we going to do to change? And that's driving behavior, and that's great.
I think what we've got to try and do is also get graphene to be used in the construction here in Gloucestershire as much as possible. You know, why not be Gloucestershire lead the way? That's the.
I'm pushing for that, Mark, and you know, we're adamant that we should be a key part of Gloucestershire's projects, and you know, the councils and generally, you know, MPs are very receptive to that. So let's see what we can do, and let's start making roads better so we don't have potholes. Let's start making concrete so it's not affecting the climate, or at least reducing the effect on the climate. Let's start using a lot more recycled materials and using graphene to improve the mechanical properties of those. And let's really start trying to make a change, because I think at the moment, you know, a lot of people are paying lip service to it. And I'm, you know, my big concern for my kids is leaving them with a better situation rather than a crisis to walk into.
I couldn't say it better than myself. No, thanks very much for that, Neill. Oliver, let's go over to you, please. Very quickly about Staylets and how's business at the moment. Can you explain what Staylets is, please?
Staylets, we are a serviced accommodation service department provider. For the uninitiated, small kind of hotel standard units, studios, and then going up in size, sort of 1-bed apartments, 2-bed apartments, etc. And those are designed for any kind of traveller, really, whether that be leisure, going away for the weekend, going on holiday, and great staycations. Cheltenham is a fabulous base to explore. The rest of Gloucestershire, the Cotswolds, etc., through to corporate workers, through to getting a lot of business at the moment. We've got 2 sites, one in Cheltenham and one down in Surrey. A lot of business from people either relocating, so in the middle of a house chain sale, or relocating for work, or having a lot of work done on their houses. So it's interesting because you think about that, and think about kind of Neill's side of the world. There's obviously a lot of people who have taken the opportunity in through the last 15 months to possibly save money, definitely rethink where they live, and go, oh, I'm fed up with this house, let's change it, or let's move, which I guess we've all known. And again, to Neill's point, I agree entirely from a hospitality point of view, both sort of accommodation, food and beverage. If people if business owners haven't rethunk the whole way of doing things, from a employment point of view, from a guest expectation point of view, from everything in the last 15 months, then A, they're not really gonna survive or be as successful as they were, and B, if you haven't taken those, whenever you get a downtime, if you don't take the opportunity to relook at how your business works, then you've got to think of whether you're ever going to be a success. So I agree with what Neill said across the board in different industries. With us, we're thankfully very busy. Our property down in Surrey is busier than it was before COVID. We managed to stay open throughout because our properties are unmanned, so we service them from a maintenance cleaning point of view on a daily basis, but we don't have any reception or anything like that, so it offers that extra level of distance and security and a bit more flexibility than sort of a hotel offering, which is why it's been popular, and the whole industry in that side of hospitality accommodation has thrived in the last sort of 18 months. And then in Cheltenham again, it's been very good. It's great to see people coming to Cheltenham for no other reason than to come to Cheltenham. We've had, we're sort of full every weekend, and a reasonable amount of weekday business as well. And that's not just because of they're coming for specific events, and we haven't even got to the racing season, etc. But people are coming to town because they want to come to Cheltenham because it's a nice place to come, which is really encouraging when you're thinking about kind of the reopening and hopefully the blossoming of small business, retail, hospitality, etc., whatever that might be. There's obviously people being dragged into the town because it's a nice place to come. So so we're in a good place. We're have been for a while, very keen to expand, and we're looking at different opportunities and strategies to expand our brand and our kind of footprint across the southwest and the west and further down south as well, because there's definitely a market there, and it's going the right way.
Okay, no, fantastic. Thanks ever so much. And I know how hard you've worked at it as well, Oliver, especially during lockdown. It's all been very, very difficult as well. I'll quickly go over to Trish. Thanks ever so much for joining us today, Trish, as well. Your first time here for Punchline Talks. Can you just explain to us, please, about First Base? How long have you run the company, and how many people do you employ? And what's it been like for you over the last couple of 18 months?
First Base Employment I started the business in 1997, so we're 24 years old this year on the 1st of September. And it's always been about doing a proper job and doing it properly. So treating people with respect. I worked for an agency previously that I didn't feel did that, and I loved the sector, but I didn't like the way that people were handled, whether that was candidates or clients. And we look after clients in the surrounding area, finding them the right people to do the right jobs at the right time. So I've got 10 members of staff currently. We've just added 4 to our headcount after, through the pandemic, we did a lot of planning. and we need the extra people to actually offer the same level of service that's always been expected of us, to find the right candidates for people. Obviously, that's challenging at the moment. We discussed earlier the lack of skills available on the marketplace. I've only got figures from April on the government website, actually, but 3.4 million employable employments furloughed as of April 2021. And we are seeing a massive shortage in blue collar workers. So the extra headcount is working really, really hard to bring in the right members of staff for the clients that are asking for them on a daily basis. And I've got a poll running on LinkedIn at the moment, actually, on how people are responding to that, how they are attracting people to the business in the first place, if anyone wants to go on and vote for me. But also I did a blog on, struggling to find the right candidates earlier in the week. And it is absolutely as a result of many different factors. So we've got Brexit, so we haven't got European nationals coming in or deciding to go home for the blue collar type job roles that we offered them previously. We've got lots and lots of people on furlough. I would say 3.4 million, I think it was. Yeah, 3.4 million employments furloughed as of April. However, that would have gone down somewhat by now. People have reassessed during the lockdown, as we all have. How they want their work-life balance to be moving forward. They've perhaps looked at their job roles and thought they want more from an organisation, or they want to be treated perhaps differently, in that some organisations during furlough didn't handle it particularly well in some instances. We've got salaries being squeezed, and I know there's sectors that just cannot respond to the need for a higher salary level because they're so squeezed on margins to start with. And we've got some people on furlough who perhaps are now quite happy on furlough. And it's only when it is taken away that they'll decide that they want to return to the employment space.
I've heard of lots and lots of that cases. Were you surprised how many people were willing to move jobs during the pandemic?
Absolutely, yeah. The first March and April time, obviously there was a huge amount of fear, and we were responding to client queries, candidate queries. I've got tenants in my premises in Stroud and staff queries. And I thought people would buckle down and ride out the storm where they were, but people kept moving, certainly in the more skilled job roles, which was bizarre, because you would imagine that people would stay put for stability, etc. But no, the market was just as fluid.
Yeah, I was completely surprised, because I would have battered down the hatches. I wouldn't have gone anywhere. Let's just do what you're used to do and work for a company that's looked after you and stay as safe as possible. But yeah. I was absolutely flabbergasted how many people moved jobs and moved roles or were looking for. I know a lot of people want to change their lifestyles, and you can understand that afterwards, personal circumstances. No, but that always completely blew me away. And yeah. I thought recruitment would I'll be honest with you, Trish, I thought your kind of business would be really, really difficult to keep it going. But now we've got the other things.
But obviously, after the initial fear of sort of March and April time, pretty much returned to normal. From a temp side, we were also concerned that people wouldn't want temps on site because they would be moving. But we quickly put into place, regulations from the point of view of sanitisation of face masks, COVID queries before people attended sites for interviews if they're going in person. And a lot of employers reacted very, very quickly and started the process remotely. So we had many, many starters beginning new job roles, on a remote basis.
Yeah, no, I know for a fact we took on people ourselves. I never actually met the guy personally till around 8 months in, and which is always slightly weird when you know someone quite well, but you don't know the physicality of them, if you know what I mean, like how tall they are, how short they are.
Yeah.
No, really, really interesting. Thanks ever so much for that, Trish. I'm going to come over to you, Dave. Dave, we are kind of overshooting on time a little bit, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to try and keep it tight. Can you quickly tell us about Blue Sky Signs, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've been running for about 3 years now, concentrating on shop fascias. We're just moving into vehicle graphics. We've just recently moved into new premises, so we're getting rapidly booked up with new businesses that are just starting up, which I think Oliver was pointing out earlier, that there's lots of people starting up a new business now, so it's an ideal time. And yeah, we're picking up lots and lots of different types of work. Mostly over last year, we did a lot of, as I'm sure lots of places did, lots of floor graphics, lots of COVID secure things, try and help protect people and keep people safe. And then it kind of exploded into, like Oliver said, people reassessing their business. How can I stand out from our competitors? How can we, upgrade and rebrand and things like that? So we've been heavily involved in that for lots of different local companies and a few national chains and things as well. So yeah, it's been an interesting sort of 18-month period. But yeah, it's actually been very productive for us as a company, and just touching on something that Trish was saying then, and that is that we're actually employing, we're advertising to employ new staff at the moment, literally just because of our current growth, and yeah, trying to get the right skilled people involved is actually, whereas before you'd be able to have your pick of lots of different people, we're actually looking at it slightly different now and thinking, okay, well, we want to get somebody in that is of a certain level, and then invest in in-house training to bring them up to the standard that we want to be able to produce work. So it does make us kind of reassess how we're doing things, so that we can kind of plan for the next 5 and 10 years.
You must have, not being funny, mate, you must have made an absolute killing on the old floor graphics and COVID secure pop-up banners and I mean, come on, you must have been cashing in going, oh, this is pretty damn good.
Well, to be honest, no, not really. I never really looked at it like that. From a business point of view, yeah, they were everywhere, and there were lots of huge orders. Thousands and thousands of them that we were producing. But again, it's a very competitive market. The world that we're in, it is competitive, and we're not the only ones that produce it. But obviously, no one produces it quite like us. But
no shadow of a doubt.
You get what you pay for.
And vehicle graphics as well. You guys have moved into that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things that I kind of left on the back burner really for a little while while the company was growing, because I always said that if we're going to go into it, we're not going to do it as a little back street place. We're going to do it properly and do it and put 100% into it. So we're using absolutely first class, world class actually materials. We've even started looking into new material which is completely PVC free. Vehicle wrapping. It's very fresh on the market, and it's something that we're doing at the moment. Our investment in our machinery, the print quality that we're getting on some of these materials is absolutely second to none now. We get a huge color range, huge color gamut. So yeah, what we're aiming for is hopefully keep it as green as we possibly can. So we've got lots of investment and lots of research going into green materials, and keep our quality as high as possible through investment in new machinery. And that's exactly what we've been doing for the last few years.
No, congratulations, Dave. Absolutely fantastic. I've been watching you and your business, because obviously we know each other before where you used to previously work as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, no, thanks ever so much for that. So, guys, we're running out of time, so I'm going to quickly scoot around what's caught your eye in this week's Punchline. Neill, I'm going to come back to you. What's caught your eye this week, please, mate? You got your sound on.
I'm getting there, Mark. All right, okay. I'm trying my best.
I know you nodded off there a second.
Not a professional like you, Mark. Okay. Big story this week is obviously the keys going up for sale. Obviously you got there first, but it's been reported in a load of other places now as well. And the keys development was key to what's going on in Gloucester, and I just hope that we can maintain that momentum and we don't go backwards. So I'm a little bit worried, I've got to admit. I think it's a fantastic area to draw custom into. I think it was done extremely well, and I just hope that it, it continues. That's all.
Okay. No, thanks very much. I was very to sit on that story for a few days. I had to, in order to get all the ducks in a row. It was quite nerve-wracking because we did have that first. We broke that story, and our website went absolutely bonkers with it as well. Oliver, what's caught your eye in this week's Punchline, please?
Just kind of following a theme, really, only because I think it's vital at the moment. Just the piece that you posted on when was that? Wednesday. Just about the Cheltenham Economic Recovery Task Force that's put together, and it's got various subgroups, and the sort of the skills subgroups have released a sort of survey targeting all the employers in the town about apprenticeships. It's from my experience, I've worked with apprenticeships before from a hospitality point of view, and I think they're a very underutilized opportunity, both from a face it cost effectiveness, but also from particularly in, like Tricia said, those blue collar industries where you want, and Dave, actually, you want to get someone in and teach them how to do it properly. There's again, I'm a hospitality person by kind of trade, or at least I was, you want to get them in, and you want to get that message out to sort of school leavers, whether that be 16 or 18, that this and other similar opportunities are available, and you can actually, go back to learning something that's valuable, and the employer gets the benefit as well. So yeah, I think if that can be pushed forward, that will be a string in the bow, as it were, to add to hopefully working on fixing recruitment issues.
Okay, no, thanks very much, Oliver. Trish, what's caught your eye in this week's Punch, please?
Just to carry on from what Oliver was saying, and the highest number of people furloughed were those 18 and under. And I think we have to remember those, it's been hard enough for us with families, but those who are perhaps young and don't have relationships yet, or are stuck in their bedrooms, they have found it really tough, I think, and we need to give them a bit of a break through apprenticeships or opportunities when we come out of this, because they have been through a hell of a time alongside us, haven't they?
No, without showing.
On another note, I've picked out a number of stories from Punchline. It's just so positive to see what goes on in Gloucestershire, and I'll forever be happy to be trading in the county, because I just find everyone so supportive, and I think we've got a fantastic community. So we've got some great things going on. We've got the new medical centre opening its doors in Gloucester, a £16 million investment there. We've got Juku, a electric vehicle charging point company manufacturing, has just won 300,000 in funding to look at the EV charging, research and rolling that out to disabled people or older people that find it difficult to use that type of technology to charge their vehicles. We've got Deroma moving into Gloucester warehouse. We've obviously got Versarien moving, Neill, and we've got Trackwise in recent months acquiring a new 2.8 million Stonehouse facility. So there's lots and lots of good things happening in Gloucestershire, and I think we all ought to be very proud of the companies that have pivoted and planned throughout the pandemic.
No, thank you ever so much. Couldn't agree with you more. Dave, what's caught your eye, please?
It was actually the article on the brewery quarter, and the increase in revenues, which I guess kind of follows on from your article on the keys as well, to make it really quite a sort of prospective buy for somebody. The fact that the figures are starting to increase, not back to pre-pandemic levels, and that's probably understandable under the circumstances right now. But yeah, I think it's quite interesting, the fact that like Tricia was saying earlier, quite happy actually to be sat at my table and being served. And I think if a lot of these places like the brewery quarter carried on with this, I don't think there would be that many complaints actually. It kind of increased the level of service, I think, in a lot of ways. And like you mentioned earlier about the extra cost, I'd be more than happy to pay a little bit more for that extra level of service. No problem there whatsoever. So yeah, I think the article on that was great. But what I have noticed is going through the national papers, the level of negativity, and then you go through the punchline, and like Tricia just said, the positive things that are happening in the county with various businesses, it is phenomenal, and it's really nice to see it all in one place.
Thanks so much, Dave. Really, really appreciate that as well. The stories that caught my eye very quickly, yes, was the Keys. Yes, the 16 million investment in that medical centre. Was there yesterday, by the way. Nearly got kicked out by a doctor while I was filming around there. Where Norvilles were moving to Waterwells. That's quite exciting, rather than closing up and moving down south. The other big one for me is Cotswolds Designer Outlet near Tewkesbury, and they've moved a step forward by appointing Realm to the next phase, shall we say, as well. So that's really, really exciting. So we try and publicise the positives within the county. And we are so blessed that we have so many great businesses here as well. So thanks ever so much for joining us, guys. Thanks for joining Punchline Talks.